Imagine your mother, your cousin, your brother. They have been hit around the head with a club and they have been dragged out of town. You know that you will never see them again unless you move quickly. What would you do? The answer is obvious, right? You would do everything in your power to find them and bring them back home to safety. Yet for some reason, the impression many historians give us is that Africans just sat idly by and watch their relatives being forced or sold into slavery, and this simply could not be further from the truth. Once again, Sylvan A Diouf in his book Fight the Slave Trade produces extremely detailed accounts of the fight against the trade. There were more African uprisings against the slave trade than there were in the Caribbean, which itself saw uprisings on an extremely regular basis as the Africans fought for their freedom. In the Caribbean, yet once again, more uprisings actually occurred on the African continent. Walled villages were common almost everywhere that slave raiding posed a threat, and they were extremely effective. So for example, basically what we're saying here is that the Africans rose to the threat. They knew that there was a threat of slave traders coming and trying to take their people. They built walls and extremely intricate defenses to make sure this did not happen. The only weakness was that people had to leave to work the land. Defence was thus often coupled with major changes in the ways people lived. Most important in some coastal areas was a change in cropping patterns. Crops were planted close to the village and worked collectively rather than venturing too far out away from safety. In Yoruba land, the Oyo Empire illegalized, so made illegal, the trade of slaves and put great effort into stamping out the widespread kidnapping in its territories. However, the daily threat of being forced into captivity completely changed West African priorities. Where once great civilizations would invest huge quantities of time and gold into building magnificent universities, palaces and cities, effort was instead made to build short-term settlements which were easy to abandon in a hurry. We see the abandonment of long-term investment, and we see the investment into short-term defensive strategies. West Africa was regressing into a lesser version of its former self. Oyo's banishment of the slave trade created political complications, leading to the first of a series of wars in Yoruba land in the 19th century. With the collapse of Oyo, no other state emerged to keep the peace in Yoruba land in the face of a growing demand for captives by the European traders. The Yoruba became the largest single source of captives for the Atlantic trade in the 19th century. So many individuals of, say, African American or Caribbean descent will be Yoruba by inheritance, or they would descend from Yoruba people. It is extremely important to note that not all resistance happened on land. Around 10% of all slave ships experienced an uprising of the enslaved Africans on their enforced voyage from the African coast to the Americas. 10% of all ships 10% of the captives on, or 10% of the ships which were carrying captives experienced a rebellion of the African captives. Some Africans were even able to overthrow their oppressors and navigate their ship back to Africa. Unbeknown to the Europeans, some of the Africans which they were buying would become their greatest adversaries. Many of the Africans they purchased were prisoners of war, skilled in guerrilla warfare. As soon as these African guerrilla warriors could, they would escape, even if it meant killing their oppressors in the process. And we will hear more about them later. Now, my task for you, a foreign invader, so this is another thought experiment. A foreign invader threatens to invade and capture your family and friends and sell them into slavery. You are outgunned, but you are not outnumbered. What are your tactics for survival? Be careful, your community leader may have been paid off by the invaders. How does this make you feel? How do you act? Are you paranoid? What do you do? How do you think this would change how your community behaves? How do you feel this looming sense of danger, constant danger, would affect how your community behaves? Would you be progressive, or would you be quite short-term in your thinking and very defensively minded? How would this affect establishments such as schools and hospitals and banks and things like that? Have a thought experiment, think amongst yourself about how this looming threat of kidnapping would affect your community. How would it change your behaviour on a day-to-day basis? Let the teacher lead the discussion, if you'd like to, of course. And once you're ready, we can continue with the presentation.